Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and family beyond the binary, good evening and welcome once again to the Coach's Corner for a very special live edition. My name is Warren Jugglegod Hammond, and I'm here to ask the stupid questions so you don't have to. Tonight, we're going to be checking out another one of Overwatch Tranquility's feature matches, and this time with Gunthera joining us. How are you doing tonight, Gunthera?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great. We've got chat open for people to ask questions if they have them there. Don't worry, I'll be sure to ask them for you. And yeah, I'm excited to get this going. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself, Gunthera. I want to know a little bit about your history in Overwatch. What are some of your notable accomplishments?
Oh, that's kind of a fun question. I've been around the tier 2 scene for a while. I've been taking a break from playing recently. Been doing a lot of coaching, as you know why I'm here.
Yes.
But I played in contenders for a while. I played in AU contenders. I played in collegiate for a little while. I've done a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think experience wise, I'm well versed when it comes to how this game is played in a lot of different places and at a lot of different levels.
Yeah, it sounds like you've really got a broad spectrum of experiences to pull from for your coaching, and I imagine that has to be a pretty big boon for you as well as a coach.
Yeah, it's always really interesting to have a conversation with someone who has some kind of fundamentally different approach to the game than I do, because I get to add that understanding of the game to whatever I've learned over time, right? You get to incorporate elements of that. So
I like that perspective.
I think I have a very unique toolkit that I've just accumulated over the years from various places.
Yeah, well, speaking of toolkits, I wanted to mention, a lot of people might not know this, but you're a race car mechanic, not a regular car mechanic, but a race car mechanic. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm going to be driving on a team with my dad and some family.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, we race 24 Hours of Lemons. It's an endurance race where you essentially take a really cheap, shitty car and then you give it a second life as a race car. So we drive a BMW E36 from 1992.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And yeah, it's super duper fun.
That is not the kind of race car I was anticipating, but I love it. That's really funny.
I'm not some Formula One guy. This is for fun.
Yeah,
we make no money.
I love it. That is just fantastic. Well, tell you what, why don't we go ahead and start talking about the match that we are going to be looking at. We have the Miami Yikes going up against the Fighting Potatoes. Now, Miami Yikes ended up taking this victory 4-0, but the very first map, which is going to be the one we're watching, was close. There was a lot of good fights there. And tonight on the show, we're going to be joined by the off-tank of the Fighting Potatoes, SolitaryBird, and Vhergo, the flex DPS from the Miami Yikes. So let's go ahead and get you two in here now. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. How about you guys?
Doing great. Hello.
Yeah, doing great. And SolitaryBird, I understand that it is I want to wish you an early happy birthday. Your birthday is tomorrow, correct?
Oh, gosh darn. Well, thank you.
You are welcome.
Can we get some happy birthdays in chat for SolitaryBird?
Yes. Can we get some little candles or something? Any cakes? Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. I never look at chat during casts, but I have to during here. And somebody said I look like a Dr. Seuss character. Thank you. I appreciate that. I am the Lorax. I do speak for the trees. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about what you want to focus on today, Gunthera. And that is just a big fat question mark. So, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about your approach? Because like you told me before, you just like to ask a lot of questions. Is that correct? Hence the question marks. It's not because he didn't know what he was going to do, right? It's not because Gunthera wasn't prepared. It's because, he comes at this with a lot of questions.
So the way that I like coaching, and I guess we can kind of start this now. This is a bit of a conversation I like to have with people that I work with.
Right.
Is that I am very much here to have a conversation and open a dialogue. I'm not here to lecture. I'm not your, 8 a.m. biology class where you have to sit there and pretend not to fall asleep on your Zoom camera when you really want to conk out because it's like, oh my God, you're just talking about molecular biology. I want to go to bed, right? No, I'm here to speak with you, right? I want to interact and ask questions. So really it comes down to I want to pose an idea and I want you as a student or you as somebody watching at home, I want you to play with that idea a little bit. I want you to go, okay, how does that fit into my understanding of the game? How does that fit into my view of how things are supposed to be? And even if you don't agree with it, right, you will learn more through entertaining the idea than you will through just disregarding it completely.
I think
Even if at the end of a conversation everyone still disagrees, you might learn something through that conversation that you wouldn't have even thought about in the first place.
that is such an excellent point. A lot of times people think they have to be a sponge when they're listening to coaching, but a lot of times you need to be a filter, right? And you have to take what works for you and leave aside the rest. So I like that approach a lot. Thank you for giving us a little insight into what we're getting ourselves into. I think it's a good time to go ahead and bring up the map now that we're going to be looking at. We are going to be looking at Busan tonight. So excited about this map for a number of reasons. A lot of the points are very different here. We're only going to be seeing 2 of them tonight. We won't be going to Mecha Base, but I think that's kind of the more standard of the 2 maps. So I'm happy that we're going to get to see. We're going to start out on downtown, and then we are going to go to Sanctuary. Now, speaking of downtown, oops, give me just a second here. Got to get the right window open. There we go. So speaking of downtown, can you tell us a little bit about the map itself and what you think strong places are?
So downtown to me is a really fun map because Mecha Base is all about the choke points, right? Mecha Base is you have 2 places you can come into the map. That's your fight, right? And Sanctuary is very open. It's very there's a lot of angles to approach. There's a lot of off angles. Whereas sorry, let me turn off my phone. Whereas I feel like downtown is a really happy medium where you have 3 open lanes you can come through, but the verticality of this map isn't really. It's something you need to take into account, right?
Right.
For me, downtown is the most I'd say you can play a lot of things here. This isn't like, oh, we're on Mecha Base, let's go brawl, right? You have a lot of places you can play, and I think a lot of comps can work here, and because of that you get to see a lot of really interesting matchups. Overall, victory is gonna winning on this map is all about, can you control theater if you're on brawl, or can you control that center area with the tree if you're on, some kind of bunker comp, and dive comps do whatever, it's just how that.
Yeah. Could you go ahead and highlight the theater area just on the map so everybody has an idea of where you're talking about, and as well the tree that you were speaking of, because I think that's important. Yeah, you've got the cursor now, right?
All right, let's see if I can match this bad boy up.
Yeah.
Oh god, we didn't rebind the eraser properly. Is that it? No. All right, sorry. This is gonna. I'm trying to match it up between the green screen and the.
Yeah, no, it's all good. If you look on it, you should be able to see the cursor for the.
Oh hell yeah, dude.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. All right. So that's what I talk about in terms of theater. That like a mega health pack area.
Oh, I think that's actually the coast right now that you're looking at.
Dude, it's so tiny on my screen. I'm so sorry.
No worries, dude. No worries. Thank you so much for bearing with us during this.
So when I say theater, I mean like this area. And let's move that down a little bit. Can I move that? No. All right, that's depressing. Yeah. Okay. So when I say theater, I mean like this kind of area. And when I say the tree, I mean like this little platform area. You see a lot of people play around this platform area because of, you see like snipers going to like peeking from these high grounds over on left and on right. And you see people like, you'll see like backlines play on these inside areas. And so controlling the center area, if you're some kind of bunker comp, is usually really important. And controlling this mega area, this theater area, if you're some kind of brawl comp, is important because it allows you to explode out from like pretty much anywhere onto the map.
Got you. So it's the location that really makes it so important. And okay, got you. Excellent. Well, tell you what, why don't we go ahead and jump into the actual game? Let's start taking a look here.
All right, sounds good. So before we even get into
gameplay and by the way,
stuff,
if you just hit the trash can icon, it'll delete everything that's on the scene. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, let's do that then. All right, cool. So, can I have my mouse back? Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm like not used to using Epic Pen.
It's all good. It's all good.
Wait, why are you doing
Oh, and thank
this?
you, Misty Yeti, for sending out so many gift subs tonight in chat. Super cool of you.
There we go.
Yeah, really appreciate that.
All right, hella. Okay, so before we even get into watching the moment to moment of how you all crash into each other, right? Step one of we can let this roll for another second, but
Yeah.
step one of winning a game of Overwatch comes down to like, what are you doing? What is your team doing? The way I'm kind of formatting this is that our first point here is going to be, how do you work in relation to you? What do you do? And then our second point, I want to be talking about, okay, now that we've brought up how you work, let's talk about how you work in relation to other people, how you work in relation to the enemy team. So, Solitary Bird, Vhergo, I want to pose this question to each of you for your own teams individually. What are your win conditions? How do you win this game? Let's pretend we can't see the enemy comp right now. We're cheating. We're in third person. How do you win this game? What do you do for your comp to walk away just 100-0? Either of you can go. I don't really.
I'll go first then. Yeah. So.
And just for everybody at home, let us know who's speaking, since we don't have cams for you guys.
Oh, sure. So this is SolitaryBird speaking right now. And so from the comp that we were running, so we were running like a Winston Diva rush comp sort of thing. I guess just getting into the enemy team and just applying pressure and damage and just kind of wear them down. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
So I want to say, you're on the right track, but that's a little vague. Okay. What's in terms of like cooldown usage, in terms of who is leading, who on your team is specifically like, I'm looking for stuff like, you have an EMP. Let's say you have an EMP and you have an Ana set up. Okay, your win condition for that fight is EMP, go for a big nade, right? I want give me your specifics.
So just like in this first, this first dry fight, for example.
Yeah. Go ahead with that.
I guess it's, in this case, it would be like pressuring out their defensive cooldowns, try and get the Winston bubble out and down, getting Diva's defense matrix worn out, finding the Sombra and keeping her off of key players like myself on the Diva, for example.
So the comp that you're on, and what you're starting to get at is, you're kind of playing front to back, right? And do you understand what I mean when I say that?
Could you clarify?
Yeah, of course. So when someone says front to back, it means we are fighting the enemy tank line and then we're fighting their back line. But when somebody says they're playing back to front, it means we're looking to dive the back line and then we'll deal with the enemy tank line, right? You're a comp that plays front to back. You have a Reaper who does a lot of damage to frontline. You have an Echo who does a lot of damage to frontline. And because of your healer comp, you guys want to stay really grouped up. So to that extent, your win condition really becomes, right? Because what you started to get at is, you're burning enemy defensive resources in their front line, and you're looking to burn tanks, right? You don't really have heroes that set up for a dive per se. You just happen to have a Monkey Diva,
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah. You're looking to burn tank lines. That's what you started to get at, and that's yeah. All right, Vhergo. So, well, it seems very similar. The change of one hero can influence a lot of things. So, how does your comp with the Sombra work that might be differently from what we're seeing on with the Echo?
Okay, so with our 6-man here, the fact that we have the Sombra opens up a lot more engagement opportunities for us. I think whenever Sombra is able to get a hack off on key targets, it's kind of like our cue to go in as a 6 and then just into the enemy team to kill that target in hopes of swinging the fight that way.
Yeah, so your win condition is go for Sombra hacks and burn whoever gets hacked?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, just like these very direct kinds of things. And as we're going to see as we start rolling out here is, remember how I said that, brawl comps need to fight over control of this theater area. You guys happen to be on dive tanks, but realistically, you are brawl comps. So you immediately see, both of you say, all right, we're going to fight for this. Sorry, it's a little laggy. I got confused there. You're both going to be fighting for this theater area. So in the small differences between your comps, in pretty much every game of Overwatch, there is a team at natural advantage and there's a team at natural disadvantage, right? One team wants to be fighting and one team doesn't want to be fighting. And that's kind of an equilibrium, which can be, one team is like 55% and the other team is 45%. So, the 45% team can still fight. But as we'll see on the second map, it's a lot. There can be much bigger discrepancies in terms of that. So in this natural state right now, which of you guys think is at, natural advantage? Who wants to be in this situation? Who wants to be fighting here?
That's kind of confusing for me because since we have the Sombra, we do have the Mega hacked. So we have that for extra sustain. However, because we don't have that Echo, we have a lot less like frontline damage there. So I don't know how it would balance out in this case. We have more sustain, but they have a lot more damage here.
Yeah, I think looking strictly at damage, that was where my head was at. Was that the potatoes would want to be pushing in right now? So
how would you weigh the value of the health pack versus the increased damage of the Echo? Which of those two seems to, and they're different resources, right? But which amongst those two would you guys say is something that is, I guess, valued more?
Probably the damage, in my opinion. If for that Mega to have any use, we need to be in that theater room. But they're 2 DPS. They're with them, like, even if we're not in that room. So maybe when we're in there, we kind of have the advantage with the Mega. But if they force us out of there, we're at a bigger disadvantage.
Yeah, so if you're able to fight where you want to be fighting, you have that advantage. But the second you end up moving positions, you lose that advantage, and then the Echo team is in a good place. Pretty much. Yeah. So the one thing about the similarities between the Sombra and the Echo that I think are going to be interesting to watch is both of those heroes don't necessarily want to be poking from the same angle as your team. Your Sombra wants to be playing in a kind of 5-1 way, where you have a 5-man core. Let me go to Epic Pen really quick. But you have, your let's say this is let's say you have oh my god, my mouse is just kind of jumping around. Sorry. You have kind of I don't know why that's happening.
Let's see here. It's not happening on my end. I just see the mouse where it is, where you left it.
Okay. Are we good now? No. Okay. It keeps bouncing me back to my other monitor. That's weird. I'm just gonna let it be.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just gonna let that be.
Yep.
So in terms of sorry, this is just being weird. You really want to be having a 5-1 core split here, where you'll have, your unit of, your team here, and then maybe you would want your Sombra over here, right? Where if they put attention on your Sombra, let's say the Diva goes to, poke out the Sombra, that means the rest of your team can push in, and if they put, attention on your team, that means the Sombra gets the hack off. Whereas Echo wants to be doing a really similar thing, right? Echo wants to be dumping stickies from this direction, while the rest of her team wants to be pushing from that direction. So one of the similarities that we're going to be seeing a lot here is, how do these teams, you guys, I guess, I'm talking about you like you aren't here, take advantage of this off angle and these heroes who want to be off angling? So I hate to say that, not a whole lot happens in this first fight. Macaroon overextends and dies here, which is that's just kind of how it is as main tank. But this is where we see Stonky starts to hit the off angle on the Sombra here and goes back to the team. But it's oh, I saw that happen in the VOD, and I was oh, he's starting to do it, and then he didn't. But part of your win condition as a team is like, how does the enemy team divvy up resources, right? It's how does the enemy team respond to the plays that we're making? And when you have a hero that wants to be off angling, you're able to tie down a lot more of the enemy resources, because Sombra can off angle very safely, right? She off angles, she shoots for 5-10 seconds, TP's out, and everything's fine, right? Same thing with an Echo on your team. So, and I hate to say that neither of you guys, you know, your teams really get a lot of advantage from this off angle hero, but it's just something that like really needs to be pushed, because when this is the only difference in your comps, that will be the only difference in who wins or loses. But this is just kind of a slow burn fight. Macaroon kind of ints, it is what it is.
I think in that situation, the reason we weren't able to support our monkey as much was the Fighting Potatoes Reaper tried to engage, and when he wraithed out, we realized that he wouldn't have that cooldown. So the Diva and I, as Reaper, we kind of went chasing after him. So because of that, we kind of ended up leaving our main tank by himself there.
Yeah, I think that's a natural miscommunication that happens. Here's something I want to bring up that I was going to say earlier, but it didn't really come up naturally, is I just kind of mentioned that in passing, but we will see, you know, in every VOD you review, it doesn't matter who it is, you will see a lot of mistakes. Not every mistake is a learning moment. Not every mistake has a lesson. Sometimes you just forget to tie your shoelaces and you trip on your own feet. You don't really learn a lesson of, now every day I wake up, I tie my shoelaces. You just, sometimes you mess up, man. That's how it is. So we'll be seeing mistakes that you guys make that I don't necessarily know or believe are super important to talk about. Obviously, we'll be bringing up a lot of things. And if you want to talk about something that I don't mention, please mention it and we'll talk about it. But not every mistake is a learning moment. So,
and I wanted to
understand that as we go.
I wanted to interject there too. Both players, I asked them to come with questions for you as well. So feel free to, you know, chime in with those whenever you feel like it as well. You know, whenever the moment is appropriate, or if we pass over it, I'll be sure to go back at the end and make sure that we cover anything you guys had questions about.
Yeah, I do tend to ramble, so don't be afraid of just talking over me.
Sounds good.
I'm giving you permission.
All right, so I'll ask something right here then. So, we're up like 1 or 2 picks here right now, and then you see that we're rotating to point. Should we be doing that, or should we be pressing into them to secure the fight and then head over to point?
That is a very interesting question. So I actually think that in asking that, we have to look at, let's go through this fight and let's talk about what happens, and then let's talk about what maybe should have happened.
Sure.
So Macaroon dies, there's a miscommunication on red, and so they're left without their main tank, right? And they decide to continue to try and take this fight, right? Maybe to set up a web on point. And when I say web, I refer to hitting something from a lot of angles at once. So that would be, you know, setting up your Sombra on this high ground and your Diva over here and hitting it from a lot of angles, right? So maybe red wants to be setting up a web on point, and then looking to take a fight after that. But what happens here is, you know, they just kind of take it as if they still had their Winston alive, which I believe is, in my personal opinion, is a mistake. When you're in a disadvantageous position, you need to be playing as if you're in a disadvantageous position, and that doesn't mean you can decide to lose. That just means you need to recognize how the situation has changed. So when you don't have your main tank, that means you can't take that same kind of frontline fight you want to be taking. You can't play that same kind of front-to-back kind of style. Given the mistake that was made here in overstaying, do you think you played this properly, SolitaryBird? Do you think your team played this properly in terms of the mistake that was made?
Well, I mean, like in terms of results, yes, and also I think it was just kind of the correct kind of like battlefield patience, I guess. It's like we'll stabilize for a minute, get our cooldowns back, and then we can push into them again, kind of like we did fighting in that middle area, I want to say.
And Vhergo, if you were able to reset this whole fight, right? You know, turn back time, how would you take this differently? Macaroon dies, how do you take this fight differently?
Exactly like you said, I think we weren't taking into account the fact that we didn't have our main tank, so we can't just straight up win a head-to-head brawl, as if we did. So approaching it more so like you said, attacking from different angles. If I potentially TP'd to high ground and went from behind as our diva pushing from the front, potentially we could have gotten a pick or two to help swing the fight, but taking that fight directly to them ended up not working out.
And what do you think is the likelihood of you winning this fight if you properly webbed point, right? What do you think is the chances of you winning this fight versus the amount of time you waste if you lose it anyways? Do you think it's the chance of winning that fight is worth it?
Technically no, because as our team is backing up here, our Winston just came back. So I think if we just backed up, that would have been like 10 seconds right there before we could re-engage. Compared to now that I'm dead, there my whole team has to wait an additional 15 seconds before I can come back into the fight.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is when it comes to a first fight scenario, be okay losing. Sometimes you just lose, right? Not every fight is winnable, and that's very okay, especially in a neutral fight. When you don't have any ultimates coming into a fight and something goes wrong, it's not, oh, I can use this and we'll gain back that resource advantage. Or, you know, if a team makes one mistake and the enemy team makes no mistakes, the team that makes one mistake loses in a neutral fight. You don't have an ult that you can use to pull it back. It's not like, oh, okay, you know, now I'm going to sound barrier and let's go in, right? I know we're down one, but if I bring back this health advantage, it's winnable. That's not how things work in a neutral fight. Be okay losing a fight. Sometimes you just lose. And I think you guys stayed for a significantly too long here, and that just messes you up. But this brings us into our first actual lesson that I wanted to be talking about. Remember how I said there were a couple of questions that were the big tying factors of all of this? Here is step one. How do you set up for a fight? Throughout the course of this whole VOD, we're going to be seeing both of your teams playing in what I would consider suboptimal positions, giving the information you have available and the map that you're playing on. So, you know, we'll be talking about it as we go, but just this idea of how do you set up for a fight? You know, what areas give your comp the best chance of success? And when and that all ties back into, you know, what we said earlier of what's your win conditions for this. So
Is this question to both of us, or?
I kind of want to, not right now, but it will be.
Perfect.
I kind of want to watch this go through in this first fight section, and then because I actually think you guys are fine. You play like vaguely close, but we'll be seeing as things kind of go on of like where do you play, how do you do things, and I'll kind of I guess give the cheats here of. Given the team comp you're on with your Echo, with everything like that, you could be scouting a lot more, right? Your Echo could be playing over in this alleyway, you know, floating above this area, tossing out stickies. Your Diva could be playing inside of apartment. Your Lucio and Moira could still be ready here. Your Reaper could be hiding underneath this balcony, right? You are on a comp, which even though you are fundamentally a brawl comp, you have individual pieces which can function alone. Right? Not everything is about we play as 6 people, we run into the enemy team. Sometimes you start in a lot of different places, and that's okay. But do you see how kind of half of the map here, half of the map that you can control, you're just not having any impact on? Because you're all deciding, hey, let's play here. That's where my teammates are. And it's a very valid thought process to say, hey, you know, that's where my teammates are. I want to be playing there. But there is a certain extent of recognizing that your comp has pieces which can function individually, being okay with those pieces coming apart and then coming back together before you're actually in a fight scenario. It's not about you know, your Echo committing to playing in this alleyway and shooting from this alleyway, and then 10 people dive your Echo and your Echo goes, guys, where were you? My team sucks. It's about your Echo staying there, shooting out some stickies and saying, hey, the enemy team's pushing alley. And then floating away while your team comes in and reinforces that area, right? It's about your Diva standing in this little apartment area and shooting in this apartment, holding it for a little bit, and buying time for, you know, Vhergo to jump onto the high ground and your Reaper to get close enough to fight. It's not about I'm going to alone take control of this fight. It's not I'm going to alone fight the enemy team. It's I'm going to be here because if the enemy team is here, that means we can have an earlier response to it. But instead, it's just kind of, we have a lot of people playing in one place. And that's not, you know, intrinsically wrong, right? You play a lot of brawl comps, and it's like, you know, you stick with your team. We're a brawl comp. We run in 6 people together. That's what you do. But in this scenario, like I said, you have these pieces that can come apart, and then these pieces that can come back together. You don't have to always stay as this one, you know, complete thing. Does that make sense? Is that an idea that makes sense, or am I just kind of speaking nonsense?
No, I
That
think that
makes
makes
sense.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
It's kind of the whole like time is money thing, and you want to like maximize your value at every possible opportunity.
Exactly. When you have everybody grouped up like this, it's like you're wasting your time, right? You could have 6 ults right now. You're very close to 6 ults, but you could have 6 ults. There's and you know, the difference, it's kind of binary, right? You either have ult or you don't have ult. If you die at 99 to your ult and that ult would have won the fight, doesn't matter. You didn't kind of win the fight because you kind of had ult. You lost the fight. It's binary. Yeah, that's an idea we'll come back to a little bit more, but yeah, all right. We're going to keep going. It's a good coalescence, and it's a good push. I like this. This is where we start to see a lot of ults come out, and I want to kind of watch it from this angle. So I like that you guys are trying to maybe kite the coal a little bit. I don't know if you knew that your Moira was hacked before or after the coal, but, you know, it's just kind of how it happens. You were looking to match, and then you get hacked, and you decide. I think it's a good response, even though the end result isn't, you know, sometimes you die. That's how it is. That's how it happens. I think the end result is fine.
Diva.
But this is just kind of actually, let's bring up our second idea. So our first idea is how do you set up a fight? And then our second idea is going to be how do you enable an ult? And I know it's a very vague question here, but I saw this Blossom come out and I went, damn, this person didn't really think about it. They just ripped it. They just hit the Beyblade. Like they did not. They just were just like, our Moira's dead. Let's go. And then, you know, you see the duplicate come out and everything. And this duplicate doesn't get a lot of value. And it all comes down to how do you enable an ult? And this, you know, that's a very vague question. So let's go into a few specifics. When you think of an ult like Death Blossom, you need a few things to line up. You need like a Lucio speed boost, and you need the enemy diva to probably be incapacitated to some extent. And you need to be close enough to the enemy team that you're going to be able to get the lifesteal off of whatever damage you're doing so you don't die. That's how you enable a Death Blossom. And once you have hit those criteria, then you can use that ult. But if you haven't hit those criteria, you can't use the ult. But here, your Reaper just hits the Beyblade. Because they go, we're down in the fight. Let's go. And this is something we're going to be seeing, you know, a lot. It's just, you see a situation, you hit the ult. It's not necessarily optimal. It's not necessarily good. But do you see how little value that Death Blossom got because they didn't go through the process of, hey, is the diva, you know, incapacitated? Do I have a speed boost? Am I close enough to the enemy team? No, they just let it rip and you got 0 value from it. That's really that. This is the first introduction of this idea, and we're just going to be seeing this continue to go as it plays. This is just kind of a cleanup situation. This is one of those fights where so many things go wrong, where you can't necessarily, you know, pick between the mistake and a consequence of that mistake. A lot of things just go wrong. But that comes up a lot in review, where you don't necessarily know the difference between the mistake and the consequence of that mistake. So
yeah, that makes sense.
You have a Sombra on your team. That means you have really good scouting. That means you know exactly where the enemy team is 100% of the time. And what do you do with it? Well, let's watch. So your Sombra's going in, saying, okay, I don't know where they are yet. I think they're setting up right side, right? Is this where you want to be for this fight? I don't really think so.
Yeah.
You have the Reaper. Your Sombra could pinch from another angle. If you have this Sombra, right, you have this scouting tool at your disposal. You have the option of being right here already. You have the option of stopping these guys from getting out of this choke point. You could have just been here and put a shotgun into Vedora's face and said, walk, do it, I dare you.
So
But
is this a situation where they could have potentially set up on like the tree area you were talking about?
So, as a brawl comp, this is going to be some of that idea of stuffing, or of how do you set up for a fight. And as a brawl comp, intrinsically, you want to be stuffing rotations. The nature of a brawl comp is, I want there to be as little time as possible between seeing the enemy team and fighting the enemy team. I don't want a poke phase. I don't want to posture for positioning. I want to be in the fight in an optimal position. And if the entire enemy team is grouped up in a hallway, that feels like a pretty optimal position to me.
Yep.
So how do you set up for a fight? Depends on the comp you're on. And in the comp you're on, I'd say that like this is an X. You don't get a check mark here. This is an X. All right. I'm no longer going to be answering those. Now I'm just going to be asking them. But you see how wide that the enemy team is able to swing out? And I say the enemy team, you're both here. But you see how wide blue team is able to swing out here just because of like the fact that there was no stuff going on? If this choke was stuffed, then you could have very easily, stayed here and fought the whole time. And because of that, they're able to kite for longer. The Reaper goes down because, you're taking a comp that kind of wants to be mostly together, and the enemy team is more spread out, so you try to match and spread out, and then it just kind of falls apart from there. All because, 15 seconds ago, you didn't really stuff it. This bomb was weird to me. I don't think this bomb should have actually killed anybody, but it did. So good job, I guess? I don't know. Like I said, not everything is a learning moment. Sometimes it's just weird. Alright, so this fight's won.
That's how you get tonight.
Given the fact that your Sombra is, once again, Stonky is scouting. This person knows everything, right? Your Sombra knows everything that's going on. So how do you set up for that fight now that you have control point here? What ideally, Vhergo, where are you guys going? Ideally.
So I mean, before knowing exactly where they're going, we should be doing what you mentioned earlier. Taking that high ground there, taking that little window room, someone keeping an eye on alley, and then just prepping to collapse on them, depending on which route they decide to take.
Yeah, it's setting up in a lot of places and being ready to push any of them at once. But instead, what's this? And then you kind of regroup over here, and then by that point, it's kind of too late, right? You've already lost control of this high ground. You don't have anybody there. On King of the Hill, the most important thing that you can do is make sure that after you win a fight, you're ready for next fight before the enemy team is. Because if you're holding a point and you win a fight and you guys spend 20 minutes being like, yeah, good job, guys, we won that, the enemy team just rolls and runs you over. And as we watch here, I don't necessarily remember if they win this, but it's like, just based off of the setup, They were able to get into this area for free, and then you guys start to commit ults. When you could have dropped on them immediately, right? Your Sombra almost has EMP. She could have played that high ground, poked for EMP, and gone. It's all about setting up early. It's all about being in a position to start the fight earlier. And you win this fight because you have, really, you have better ult economy. You're able to use a lot of stuff and come back from that position, kind of like we said earlier, how, you're in a losing position. You're able to actually commit ults to even that up. But the way that you set up here is so suboptimal that you have to use those ults in order to get that fight back. The way that you're not getting value before the fight starts means that you need to be using those ults to get value when the fight actually starts, when you could have just been in an advantageous position to begin. This is actually another example of that question of how do you enable an ult. Pugster just kind of uses duplicate here, and then nothing really comes of it. You don't, Pugster doesn't really have their team with them, ready to push, right? I think somebody got hacked, and there's just a lot of damage coming out. And so the question of how do you enable that ult is you need to make sure that there are people there to fight with you. And we'll see that a lot more in second round. That's a good EMP. I don't know why that visually bugged, but I like that EMP. And this is just, I think, a cleanup and a recap. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Gunther, while we're getting through this fight. You mentioned that these teams are essentially playing a brawl composition but with dive tanks. So what is it specifically that's going to make it a brawl composition, right? What instead of looking to the tank line, how do you define a brawl composition?
That's sorry, I hit my mic. That's actually a very good question. I think it comes down to, do I want to answer that? Yeah, I guess. Okay, I will. Fundamentally, we have to think about what makes up a brawl comp. And yeah, sure, it's Ryan Zarya, that's the brawl comp,
right?
But
because that's what most people think. Yeah,
that's what most people think of, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's how you're playing it. The team that, what we see both of these teams doing is, okay, you're on Winston D.Va. Those are tanks that traditionally want to be together. D.Va can float around in a lot of places, but at the end of the day, you want your tanks to be together there. Reaper is a hero that wants to be playing with your tank line. You want that's just how it is. And then Lucio is a hero that wants to enable a grouped up team, and Moira is a hero that only works with a grouped up team. So sure, you see, Lucio, you play him in dive, and you play a Sombra in dive, and you play a Monkey D.Va in dive, but you look at all of the individual parts, they say dive, and then you put them together and it becomes brawl because of the interactions between them. It's not just, these are dive heroes, it's we may be playing traditionally dive heroes, but the way they all work together becomes a brawl. So your Moira wants to stick with your tanks. Your Lucio wants your team to be grouped up. Your Reaper wants to be standing behind your D.Va because your D.Va can soak damage for him. You happen to be on a Winston because that's a faster hero, but at the end of the day, you're doing the same thing on the Winston that you would be on a Rhine. You're cleaving doorways, you're holding chokes. Maybe you're not shielding in the same way, but you're able to go a little bit more aggressive off of it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you.
Cool.
Excellent answer. Yeah.
Sometimes I speak in moon runes.
That time you were crystal clear.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, so let's go back to this this question again of, how do you set up for a fight? You're almost at Death Blossom. You have beat. And I already spoiled it earlier, so we can all kind of make up the answer for ourselves, but the way you set up for this fight is you're close, right? You're ready to be a part of it. You have people set up on these high grounds and all around. And we just see you guys playing on point. What are comms like right now, actually? If you're able to peel back that veil a little bit. Like SolitaryBird, as you're at, what are you guys talking about right now?
Chances are, trying to think back, we're probably still going, we're finishing up on ult tracking and going through a fight plan of like what ults we're gonna use. So like, pretty sure we're discussing. Yeah, we're gonna engage with Beat here once they push in, so we can sustain out the fight.
Okay, given what you know about this alt economy now, do you think that's an optimal fight plan?
No, unfortunately not.
Why?
Because they also have their beat out, right? Or they have their beat available right now, so they can sustain the same amount that we can. Then they have the edge with the Death Blossom once that wears out.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I as a guy who's played a lot of main support, I don't like engaging a fight with Beat at all. I think it's bad. And that's a personal opinion thing. To me, it just feels like by the time you've already engaged the fight with Beat, it's halfway over, and your team is just kind of like, oh, now we're in and mostly dead. So that's more of an anecdotal thing. But yeah, like sometimes in your fight planning, you will be wrong, and that's kind of okay. At the end of the day, it's just like a bad plan done quickly, I believe, is better than a good plan done slowly. So if your plan was let's engage and fight them with Beat here, right? And you did it right here, I would say good job, because you crashed into the enemy team like a fucking excuse my French, like a runaway freight train, and run them over and you win the fight, right? But now you're doing this plan slowly. It's let's wait back here, let's play back here. 6 idiots following one bad plan is better than 6 good players following 6 good plans. It's that same line of thinking, right? If your plan is simple, you have no reason not to make it quickly. And if you can make it quickly, that allows you to set up for a fight.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
This is my realm.
And then I like you going high ground here, Vhergo. I think you drop a little quickly, but I liked like seeing that. And this is just kind of a wish of a wash of colors. There's not really a lot to talk about in this fight, but I think in next round, I think all of the things that we've been starting to talk about are going to come together. Right? So we see, well, yeah, we'll talk about it when we get there, because we see a lot of comp swaps that I like.
And as we're just watching this last fight wrap up, I wanted to mention to chat again, if you all have any questions, go ahead and post them in chat. This would be an especially good time because we're going to be transitioning to the next sub map as well. So, yeah, any questions you have, be sure to chime in with them. And let's go ahead and pause it for a second because I want to take us back to kind of an overhead view now. Or actually, before we even do that, I just want to, yeah, give me just a second. Just kind of like recap that last fight and see if Bird and Vhergo, if you all have any other questions before we move on to the next map.
For me, not specifically about that last match, but I do have a question about our comp. So with the Reaper Sombra 6-man comp, our go-to like win condition is the EMP Blossom. But especially when playing that 6-man brawl, uh, is that combo like necessary? I feel like you could still technically get a lot of value with just EMP by itself and with the Reaper ult by itself. So like in what situations is it better to combo the two, and when should you be using them individually to, technically have more ults, or more fights with more ults in the long term?
So, amongst EMP and amongst Blossom, which of those 2 ults can win a fight on their own?
I mean, oh, on their own? Oh, a Blossom.
I would actually say that's wrong.
I mean,
I
are
don't
we?
think Blo-
I would have.
I don't
Hey,
think
I would have
Blossom can win
said
a fight on its
Blossom
own.
too. So
Okay, no, I'm assuming
Don't
you're
worry.
saying like by themselves. Are we still talking like in a 6v6 situation?
Yeah, 6
when...
versus 6.
Oh yeah, EMP easily then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blossom can't really win a fight on its own. Blossom needs like another thing to be there for it, right? That's why the Beyblade meta existed back in the day, because that Reaper wasn't getting any value without the nano boost, but you gave him the nano boost and he did something, right? EMP can win a fight on its own. It's kind of like you have Grav and Blizzard, right? Each of those fights on their own, or each of those ults on their own, can win a fight. And if you use them both together, it kind of feels a little wasteful. EMP Blossom is not quite as bad because of the fact that Blossom can't really win a fight on its own. It needs something else. But using a Blossom Coalescence and kind of pocketing your Blossom as he pushes through the enemy team, that's good because you're keeping your Blossom alive. You know, you're enabling it in the way that it wants to be enabled. But using EMP, and that being said, it's not you should never use another ult with EMP. It's just maybe Blossom isn't the right one to do it, right? That being your plan going into it, you know, things change on the fly all the time, right? You know, you need to pop an ult when you didn't think you need to pop an ult. That happens. But if your plan going into it is let's combo EMP with Blossom, you're probably either relying too much on the Blossom or you're getting not enough value out of the EMP that you could be getting. You could be using that EMP to not use ults and farm other ults, right? If you're able to hit it properly. I don't think there's a single correct, like you should never or you should always. I think it doesn't get a lot of value, but that's just because of the fact you could be getting more out of it.
All right, thank you for that answer. Let's go ahead and take a look now at the next map that we're going to be going into. So, like we said before, this is going to be Busan Sanctuary now. So, do you want to take us just a little bit talking about this map, Gunther?
Yeah,
from the overhead? Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And we do have...
Yeah, dude. I blew up to full screen now, so I think we'll be good.
Nice. Okay, cool. And Fedora had a question. What is the load room here? That is that's just something that Cavalier made. So you'll have to ask him. They're talking about what they're seeing on the stream right now.
I was so confused.
Yeah, I saw the confusion in your eyes right there. Yeah. So yeah, not a question for you, but a question for us on the production side. But yeah, go ahead and tell us a little bit about Sanctuary.
So something that I kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking about downtown is how Sanctuary has a lot of these really wide open areas. And so you kind of see it's this game of circular rotations that you very much see in this round coming up. And I wish we actually saw a little bit more of it, but you know, that's why we're here to coach. It's like anywhere you go on this map, you're spotted by something, right? If I walk out of stairs here, I'm getting peeked from, you know, here, and here, and here, and here, and here, right? You're getting peeked by everything. A big part of Sanctuary is that your rotations need to be very specific in terms of where you're going. There's no... You start to commit to one place and then you go to another place. If you're making a rotation on Sanctuary, you need to complete that rotation, because if you don't complete that rotation, it leaves you out in the open in these really wide open areas that you don't want to be in. So, and we'll be seeing that a good bit as we have kind of a poke versus brawl matchup coming in. Yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing on this map. It's that when you're making a rotation on Sanctuary, you need to be very, very purposeful, I think is the right word for it.
Got it. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it then. I've got us queued up here.
Cool. Let me minimize that really quick.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. So let's skip ahead 10 seconds and let's kind of go through again what I asked earlier. For both of you of, I think Shy swaps to Zen, so I just want to have 5, that up. 4, all right. So I want to go to that question I kind of asked earlier of how do you win the game? What does your comp do here? And how does your comp, you know, what do you need to enable for your comp to happen? So SolitaryBird, we kind of already spoke about it, but if you wanted to go through it again, maybe now that we've kind of talked about a lot more stuff.
Yeah, like in light of talking about the rush comp as really a brawl comp, we wanna we wanna approach the other team with like take routes that take as little poke as possible. And you said because you said that it's very open on this map, so we wanna get to like one of their nearby corners so that way we can move into engage really quickly on their front line.
Yeah, that's a valid way to look at it. And yeah, Vhergo, go ahead. You are on a fundamentally different comp now.
Yeah, correct.
How do you win?
So, with this map, given that it has so many different angles to approach from, using the ball composition, we're able to use our ball and our tracer to create a lot of disturbance and distraction, not allowing the enemy team as like a full brawl to be able to like walk into our team like freely. So cutting them off mid rotation and things like that. And then looking for those opportunities where they use their cooldowns, like their escape cooldowns, to target someone specific to take them out. Like when Moira uses her Fade or Reaper uses Wraith, creating those opportunities with the ball tracer engages, and then coming in for a follow up to try to get those picks while our core kind of sticks together, rotates away from the enemy core, and does poke from a distance.
So you're starting to get into something else I wanted to talk about, which is that kind of phase 2 idea of, you know, your comp in terms of your comp and then your comp in terms of other people. But so fundamentally, you mentioned that you talked about this at the end of your comp is like looking to play along sightlines and poke. Really, that's how you win this. And from a lot of angles, I see actually something that I saw, and we'll talk about it as we go, is that you on the tracer and your ball, Vhergo, you guys do a good job at the start of a fight of setting up in a place to gank somebody, and then the gank does work or it doesn't work, and then you just rejoin your team. I don't think this is very good, and we're going to talk about it as it happens.
Yeah.
2, 1. Round 2. Capture the objective.
So we're going to be seeing, actually, yeah, we'll let it keep going. But something we're going to be seeing is kind of this idea of like matching rotations. So these guys, you guys want to be playing far away, right? Especially this kind of backline group, you really don't want to have these guys fighting. You don't want people running over these guys. And this is a comp that says, hey, I want to run you over. I am a runaway train. And this is like a car. This is like a guy trying to learn stick shift, and he's like stalled out in the middle of a train tracks, and he's like, oh god. Here's a rumble of the tracks from far away. Is not able to rotate out fast enough. That was grim, but you're gonna see it happen here. And we're also gonna see, that idea of you have a comp that has a win condition and how those win conditions match up into each other. So our red team wants to be poking from a lot of angles. Our blue team wants to be running into the red team. I would like you guys to watch neither of those things happen. You've both kind of said, hey, this is my side of the map, and that's your side of the map. And Vhergo, you do a good job, like I said earlier, of, you start in another place, and then you rotate back and group back up again. But our Brawl team didn't execute on their Brawl win condition, and our Poke team stayed alive. So I guess that is winning on their Poke win condition, but they were playing so close, right? It was just, these 2 feet separating them, where realistically, they were playing into that Brawl win condition. So the idea that I want to be discussing is playing for your win condition versus playing against the enemy win condition. And these are 2 very, very different things.
Huh. That's something I've never thought about. Like, playing against the enemy win condition. That specifically. That's an interesting thought.
So the idea of playing for your win condition or playing against the enemy win condition is, I guess, really the ground on which you meet the enemy team. We're gonna see here that our poke comp drops to point and plays very, very close to our brawl comp. And this is playing into our brawl comp's win condition. This is what our brawl comp wants to be doing. Our brawl comp is going to want to be brawling. Fedora dies here because, you know, they play slow properly and, you know, they stay on that high ground and they win that. But
that actually, if I can interject for just a moment, Fedora had a point that they wanted to make in chat. They said if potatoes push more, we get more of their poke angle, and that was their thought process. So a little bit of an insight into what they were thinking.
In terms of playing over here, there comes a point where, as a brawl comp, you have the ability to close a gap. And once the enemy team crosses that threshold, it doesn't matter how big the gap is. It doesn't matter if it's a foot or if it's 10 meters or like, once they're at that threshold where you can push onto them, you can push onto them. It doesn't matter how wide the enemy team wants to go. If you have the ability to push, you have the ability to push.
All right, that's fair. Thanks, Fedora, for giving us that little insight. Anybody else who's on any of these teams too? Yeah, chime in with any thought processes you have. Actually, because it's really good
process.
To know. Yeah,
and just because I disagree, it doesn't mean it's not a valid thought process. Like,
right,
that's how you think. It's how it is. You know, I would say I'm an auditory learner. It doesn't mean I look to people who read books and I say, yeah, you're stupid. Reading books, being a visual learner, that's dumb. It's just how you work. It's just how you think. Me disagreeing with you doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means I disagree. But so this is actually very interesting to me in terms of what we saw in first fight is we saw a team go down one person and then commit to staying in that fight when the enemy team had a similar win condition. But here we see our brawl team go down a person and they stay in this fight given the fact that they're not against another brawl team and they're actually you guys are actually able to outlast for a really long period of time because the enemy team isn't able to push that advantage quite yet. And so I think this is kind of interesting to watch in terms of how, like, being down a person, you know, when you go from an advantageous position to a disadvantageous position, what does that mean depending on the comp you're playing? And so being in a disadvantageous position on this brawl comp means you need to play a lot more safe and you need to let your teammate get back from spawn and you need to get your team back together. And it's harder to push an advantage on a poke comp, right? At least I feel like it's much more difficult. On a poke comp, if you get an advantage, it's kind of like, cool, we are now closer to winning the game, but nothing changes for us. Whereas on a brawl comp, if you get into an advantageous position, you now have the ability to just win the fight, right? Brawl comps are good at pushing advantages. Poke comps are good at developing advantages. So now that this poke comp has developed this advantage, they got that kill, they're not able to push it because the comp's not good at it. It's just good at getting the advantage.
That's really interesting. So, like, the poke comp, it really the name is so appropriate because even after you poke someone away, you've still got to just poke the rest of the team away. Nothing changes.
Fist.
Right.
It is just poke. There is no fist.
Exactly.
Whereas the entirety of Brawl is a punch. It's kind of slow, but once it hits you, you just got punched, man.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah, exactly. You see it coming, you know it's going to hurt.
Yeah, with poke, you got to keep poking until they snap.
Exactly.
Right.
I actually like this. I will say this trank into your brig pushing up and starting to brawl gives me like goats vibes, and it makes me kind of sad. We see
sad because
like,
you miss
I have
it?
trank. Yeah,
sad because you miss it. Okay, I was gonna see you. So you wish goats was still around.
Oh yeah, I am a proponent of goats being the best meta in terms of
really not just like it, but the best. All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Season 2, stages 2 and 3 of Overwatch League. Primo Dolce. That is the best Overwatch has been.
Wow.
And if you don't believe me, if you haven't watched those games, go back and watch them.
All right. I'll have to go take a peek at some point.
Hell yeah, dude.
Oh, and a big thank you again to Mr. Yeti in chat for gifting 3 more subs. Thank you so much.
Bless up. But now we see, okay, you guys are all back to even, right? You both have 6 people. The brawl comp is in a position to brawl. The poke comp is in a position to brawl. The poke comp is trying to say, okay, I see your win condition. How can we do it better than you? Right? How can we brawl better than the brawl comp? Because now you're in this situation. Whereas the brawl comp is like, oh, sweet, a brawl.
Right.
And then they kind of don't take it for a little while. And that's partially because the ball runs really good interference here with the mines. But that's also just because I don't think maybe SolitaryBird, you guys recognize that advantage quickly enough. But, and then, it happens, but.
By the way, Eski in chat from the Miami Yikes, the red team, they agree with you that Goats was the best meta.
Yeah, see? That's that main support brain. We both understand. Getting 3 sound barriers in a single fight, that was peak Overwatch. And yeah, I actually think this is a really good mines to run interference from Macaroon. But we see how, like, there's this moment where the brawl comp, or the poke comp, is trying to play as a brawl into the brawl comp. And the brawl comp has the ability to win. You have the ability to press W and win the fight, and then you don't take it, and then the Miami Yikes are just able to run a lot of interference and kill you. But
what do you think you're doing?
The point I'm trying to get at is this idea of, you have this win condition, you have this ability to win a fight, and you need to actually be looking for those things. You can't just say, oh, we're on a brawl comp, that means we fight, and then assume that you're fighting, right? It's not enough to swap Tracer or swap McCree into an enemy Tracer and say, now I'm on McCree, the Tracer isn't doing anything. If you don't save your flashbang for the Tracer's going to keep getting away with murder. Just because you happen to be on Cree doesn't mean the guy's not on Tracer, right?
Right. Yep. Not until you have something to say about it, I guess.
Yeah.
With your flashbang or something. Yeah.
So here's this idea again of setting up for a fight. So Vhergo, first of all, I like your gank positioning here. This makes me kind of happy. But based on the ults that you have, based on the heroes that you're playing, where do you want to set up for this fight? How do you want to take this fight?
I think we want to get our poke kind of further back, and then our ball and I should be on an off angle, prepared to engage while they're mid rotation, or just create disturbance as they're trying to get to point.
So you want to be playing for distance and then having your ball tracer just collapse from another angle?
Yes, I think that's what we're going for.
All right, cool. Because we're going to see this rotation starts through left. It takes a second. That's how it is. And then once this rotation is almost over, so part of playing this poke comp and saying, hey, I want to play for the longest fight possible, right? The longer the fight goes, the more likely you guys are to win, right, Vhergo?
Correct.
Is the rotation of your backline. So starting far away is good. Staying far away is better. So let's watch this brawl come in. Let's watch how you guys respond to it.
Nerf this.
That's an okay bomb. It's whatever.
Adaptive sense.
Oh yeah, I forget that. Once again, there's a lot of ADHD going on here. But as a poke backline, if the enemy team starts rotating this way into you, you just keep playing for distance, right? You rotate it. You want to rotate into Dojo, and if they keep pushing you, you rotate over here. We're gonna see, I think, next fight as well, how there's a lot of, your backline decides a position, and then you just kind of stay there. Your backline doesn't say, okay, they've gotten closer to us, now let's go to a better position. Your backline just goes to a position and then says, Well, I was far away, so I've done my job. I don't necessarily believe that is an optimal thing. This fight's just kind of burning out. That it happens.
Yeah.
I think it's way more interesting to look at posturing and like how positioning goes into a fight than it is to really talk about like the
What
ults
happens
that you use in a mid fight. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Because everything that happens during a fight is a consequence of what happened before the fight.
Yes.
Like if you take a professional Overwatch player and you show them like 10 seconds of a game and then you say, all right, tell me what happens in the next 10 seconds, they could probably just tell you exactly what happens because everything that happens is a consequence. You peeking the wrong angle and dying, that's a consequence of you peeking that wrong angle.
Yeah.
You dying wasn't the mistake. The mistake was peeking the angle. And so if you start to peek the angle, it's easy to say that's the consequence.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna back when I used to coach juggling, I used to say to my students, everything that happens in the air.
Coached
right?
juggling?
I'm a professional juggler. I was a world champion juggler.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And toured around the U.S. for 15 years playing theaters all across.
That's sweet.
Thank you. Yeah. So during my time coaching, what I would tell my students is that, what happens in the air, right, is a direct result of what happens because of your entire body, right? How your entire body is positioned. And so it's kind of the same thing that I'm hearing from you, right? It's almost like your initial positioning is analogous to like, how you're holding yourself, right? And that's what's going to set you up for success. And everything starts at the positioning, right? That's where it all begins. So if you're not starting out with good positioning, then yeah, you're stepping off on the wrong foot.
Exactly. It's just that, you see, I actually think the rotations that you guys are making, SolitaryBird, is pretty good in theory. The idea of, okay, let's push here. Okay, let's go here. I think it's pretty good. But the end result is just like in the middle of a fight, something happens and then everybody goes, oh, we got to deal with this thing, right? When in all reality, it should be, let's keep doing what we're doing. We don't, maybe this ball's diving in on us. What is he going to do? 10 damage and then leave?
Yeah.
But I think we'll see that really well. I think it's in this next fight. I thought it was last fight, but it's probably this next fight. Once again, I like the jungling that you guys are doing, Vhergo. I think this is good. Where you're just like, I'm going to hit him from a bunch of angles and be obnoxious. This is good. This is how you want to be playing this comp. But you guys start to rotate through. Spending a lot of time just like, there's that guy. Let's go back and watch this a little bit from an overhead because I imagine, the scouting is coming out that like, they're rotating through. What is this? Cliffs? Yeah, they're rotating through cliffs. And so your backline starts to rotate, right? And then they just kind of stay here. They've decided, okay, we've made one positioning change. And then by the time the second positioning change starts to happen, it feels a little too late to me. Because the dive already starts to come in and the fight's happening. And I think a faster team, SolitaryBird, if you guys were faster, that would be it. This fight would be over. You would have 6-man jumped onto these guys and they'd be dead already, right?
Makes sense.
So, in terms of playing as a brawl team, you need to be very singular in focus. Because now, there was a ball and a tracer over here. And so you guys get distracted with the ball and the tracer, and you have people going and dealing with the ball and the tracer, but that's not your target. That's not your focus. This is your focus, right? Killing these guys is how you win. The tracer and the ball are just there to stop you from killing the enemy backline, right? So, as a brawl comp, your solitary single-minded focus ends up becoming let's kill the least mobile people on the enemy team.
Right.
And I think as a poke comp, this backline takes significantly too long to rotate around, because I don't know if it's... I mean, there was a little bit of like, tap dancing going on stairs over there of like, do we want to go here? Do we want to go here? And back and forth a little bit. But it's really just... If you were able to... It's kind of like... You ever seen like in a Jackie Chan movie where you got one guy on one side of a table, and you got another guy on another side of a table, and they're trying to chase each other, and they just rotate around the table a bunch until one guy just jumps over the table? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. No, I know 100% what you're talking about. Yeah.
Big Trouble in Little China. Is that it? Is that the
Visualizing it
movie?
right now.
Exactly, right? That's what needs to be happening here as a poke backline. You need to be running around the table as the other person's trying to chase you, and then the brawl comp eventually makes the decision to amp through the middle and kill you. But for as long as possible, you need to be rotating around in circles, because the core of the brawl team is here. As a poke team, you need to be here, right? You don't need to be... You're adjacent. You need to be across.
Yeah, it's interesting that the point at which you said it was too late for them to start rotating, that still seemed like there was so much distance. So I think it's just interesting to highlight like how early you may need to start rotating as that backline, right? Because with that Lucio there to speed amp, that distance gets closed very quickly.
Yeah, when playing against a Lucio and you don't have a Lucio just because of the comp that you're on, you need to be thinking that you're playing the game as if your feet are in molasses, right? You're stuck to the ground, and if you need, and that's that purposeful rotations I was talking about. If you're doing something, you need to be doing it significantly earlier than you think you do. Because if you say, oh, they're getting close, now we need to be making this rotation, it's probably too late.
Right.
Because they're going to be faster than you. It's the same reason, like, you don't play a Reinhardt without a Lucio on your team. You just don't. Because at that point, by the time your Rein says, oh, I'm dying, I need help, there's no speed boost to amp him out, right? He's just dead.
Yeah.
I'm always reminded of that first choke point on Dorado, where you see them at, like, the first turn, and it's like, yeah, we're already rotating to choke.
Yeah.
Be there any second. So.
Exactly. 100%. You got it. Okay. This is, just once again a consistent theme that I'm seeing with this
the potatoes.
You guys,
yeah.
SolitaryBird, is you're together. This is what you want, right? You see those guys over there? They just said your mom was ugly. Look, you got all your friends with you. These guys really like your mom. She bakes really good cookies.
Oh yeah, so we should take the rumble over there then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go take the fight over there. What are you guys doing? Do you see how you guys are together? You're in a position to push this fight. Even though that McCree was using High Noon, I guarantee you, if you dived him with 6 people, he would just die. And he wouldn't be able to shoot. He'd just be dead. And he would go, dang. I wasted ult. Now would be the conversation. But instead he didn't waste ult because you guys decided, we're going to hide from this High Noon. But if you pulled the trigger earlier... right? You guys were all together. You were all ready to go. And then, there's a guy dying. There's a McCree, and there's a ball jumping me, and all these things happen. If you guys were solitary in your purpose, solitary in your focus, and you executed on the win condition of your comp, this fight would have been over already. You would have killed 3 people, and that'd be that. But because of that, your Echo gets a little out of sync. She pushes too far forward. She dies. Your Winston and your Reaper are taking a lot of damage right now. Your Winston can't push him with his Primal in the way that he wants to. And yeah, you win the fight because you're able to outlast them, but you could have won this fight in half the amount of time with half the amount of ults if you realized that you were together and you just pulled the trigger earlier.
I think it's a scenario of like we put the cart before the horse, where we were
Mm.
so tunnel visioned in on getting the points that we forgot to. we're in the middle of a team fight. We should win the team fight first and then cap
If-
point afterwards.
If you two and everyone in chat takes one thing out of here today, I want it to be step 1, win fight. Step 2, take point. You don't do step 2 first. You do step 1. I know this is probably the most basic thing I have ever said in any coaching on the planet. But that doesn't mean it's not true.
You know, sometimes hammering home those fundamentals is really what's needed, you know? And yeah, I think that makes sense, you know? There's some profoundness in that kind of simplicity.
I got inspired to practice aim training every single day because my friend Grant watched one of my VODs and said, "Your aim is bad." And that was it. That was the whole conversation. But
Yeah.
you just have one person say one thing to you and you're like, well, all right, I knew my aim was bad, but then he said it and I was
right,
like,
right.
oh, right, it is bad.
And
Yeah.
that day we changed our lives. We turned
Exactly,
our lives
dude.
Yeah.
around.
It's that small, it's like, just, it's really, how do I word this? Yeah, no, sometimes you just need the same thing said from an outside source. Sometimes
Yes.
you know that something's a problem, but you need someone else to say it because, of course, you know it's a problem. But what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
I know I have a problem. Okay. I drink too much caffeine. Okay. But if my dad goes, hey, didn't we do the recycling like 3 days ago? Why are there 7 Monster Energies in your trash can? Well, then I'd go, oh, well, maybe I drink too much caffeine, you know?
Yeah, it's sometimes you just need to hear the same thing said a different way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we've already gone a lot of time, so we'll keep going here, but
Oh, here we go. Got a question from Exuberance in chat. They wanted to know if you could explain why you win the fight first and then cap second. Just for the people who don't understand why. I think you... No, yeah, I think going into a little bit of that would be good. Yeah, thank you, Exuberance.
No, it's a good question. It comes down to, remember how I said a while ago about things being binary in this game? Of you don't kind of win a fight. You either win the fight or you lose the fight. You don't kind of win a point. You either win the point or you lose the point.
Right.
If you spend a lot of time capturing point, getting to 99%, and then dying, you go report the score. You're not going to go, it was 3-0. Oh, but it was close. The maps were close. The scorecard's just going to say 3-0, right?
You'll hear the casters say that, but yeah, the scorecard isn't going
The
to.
scorecard just says 3-0. History does not remember circumstance. You simply lose.
Right.
The reason you step 1 win fight, step 2 cap point is because as long as you have not lost the point, remember that binary win or lose, it doesn't matter how close to winning the enemy team is. If you have control of point, you have control of point. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get that control of point as long as you have it. And by making sure the fight is won before you put resources into capturing point, you are stopping any chance of that point being retaken, and you are confirming you have taken point, right? You're not half capturing point, and then the enemy team pushes you off. You are making sure the fight is won, and then you are making sure you have point. But if you make sure you have point, well, then the enemy team's going to contest. And then the fight's going to be on point. And if you lose that fight, well, you've just wasted 30 seconds. And the enemy team has gone up, 30%. And now you're losing the point, and you're, oh, God, what do I do? We're losing.
Yep. Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
That does. Absolutely.
All right.
I especially liked that point about, like, you win the fight, and that ensures that they're not going to be able to retake it. I think that was a critical piece of information there that I really appreciated.
Hella. All right. Is this what I think it is? Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading.
Sure.
This is probably one of the things that I see. And this is going to tie together a lot of what we've seen from the potatoes so far. Is this idea of how do you deal with split focus? There's
Do you
ball
mean
on point.
split focus from the point of view of the potatoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a fight going on here. There's some stuff happening over here. We got two groups of people, right? Dealing with two different things. And it's not really a problem for you here, but I think this was the most perfect example of you just have people in different places doing fundamentally different things. And that's not what you want your comp to be doing, right? If you were on a comp that wants to be playing together and you are not together, how do you get together? That's not a rhetorical question. I like go for it. How do you get together?
Call a regroup on a specific location. So like maybe call like the rest of the team back to point because they're contesting it, and also they have less people there, so it's probably more advantageous fight for us to win.
Yeah, just saying, hey, let's do this one thing. And the biggest part of that is it needs to override every other thing. It can't be, oh, people are talking, calling targets. It can't be, hey, guys, can we come back to point, please? It needs to be, stop. Like, your comms need to sound like, hey, stop what you're doing right now and go do this other thing. This other thing is more important. Do this first, right? It's like it's like you ever heard target calls in an overtime scenario, and oh, the Zarya has grav. Stop shooting this guy. Zarya. Shoot Zarya first, right? It's that same kind of thing of your priorities need to change, and sometimes the only way you can have your team change your priorities is by yelling at them. And it's not about being mean. It's just about being loud. So yeah, when you're in this kind of split focus scenario, you need to go from, oh, could we deal with this, to do this right now or we lose.
It's a conveying urgency kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's good wording.
Yeah.
And it's not really an issue for you guys here, right? Because, you know, you're kind of in an advantageous position overall, but your Reaper dies, and then your Lucio dies, and it's like, you guys were just so split here that, well, now you're down 2 people, and Miami Yikes are coming back, and
Yeah.
oh god, where's my Reaper? He had Death Blossom. I really like that guy. Where's my Lucio? I want him to box out the ball. I want him to boop the ball away. You guys got split. You know, you said, 2 people are dealing with the ball, and then some other people are dealing with what's happening over there. And I think if you made a central regroup call of like, let's go here, let's do this thing, then you wouldn't be so afraid here. You'd be able to actually set up for this fight, right? You'd be able to set up really close inside of drum, or you'd be able to set up like really close on this pillar. You wouldn't be, let's hide behind point. I'm scared.
Right.
Mom, come please pick me up. There are people drinking at this party. I'm scared.
But yeah, it's kind of like what you talked about earlier about, what was it? Consequences being the results of like how you're setting up beforehand. I like remember watching drone racing, and they were talking about how each turn is setting up the next turn.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, no, that's exactly that. It's that everything you do is both a consequence and something setting up for something else. So you guys losing all of that fight before and having 2 people die there means you weren't able to set up close, which means that, well, now the Miami Yikes are able to set up properly, and you know this. Where's my tracer friend? Where's our wrecking ball? Our wrecking ball is able to off angle, and you know now it's just the enemy team is set up properly. Where was the consequence? Where was the mistake? It was kind of a cascade of things. That all ties back to this one thing you did, 30 seconds ago. No, I feel like anything that I would have mentioned about most of it, because this is just kind of a slow burn fight where,
Right.
if I remember correctly, Miami Yikes just win this overtime with ult economy, and it just comes down to, once again, potatoes aren't like, you don't really recognize the fact that you're in a position where you can all dive together, and it just kind of burns the fight out. But that's just, I guess, the universal constant. Death, taxes, not pushing when your entire team is 6 people together. Those are the only certainties in life.
That and going against a Smurfing comp.
Oh yeah. Well, no. Anybody better than me is a Smurf. Anybody
right.
worse than me sucks.
Right. Exactly. I forgot.
That's the rule. That's the rule. All right. Well, in the wise words of the late great MF Doom, that's that.
Yep. Well, let's summarize things a little bit. We talked about this a little bit before the show, but you actually came out with something that you said if you want everybody to leave with one thing, it's this. Do you want to leave them with that thought again? Because I did write it down.
That's an okay thought to leave it with.
Then let's do that. I'm gonna type it up here. So it was step 1, win fight. And then step 2,
Step 2, cap point.
Step 2, capture point. There we go.
And at the end of the day, everything we spoke about, I think, does tie back to that to some extent, of how, like, you know, these are all consequences of actions, and the mistake might have been 30 seconds ago, but that's still a consequence of that, you know?
Yeah, it really does go very far back in time. Like the like, you know, thinking about like the original mistake or the original misplay or whatever, it really brings that into focus, I think.
Yeah, I'm if you guys have any questions, by the way, before we really are done with wrap up, now's the time.
And anybody in chat as well, get your questions in now as well. And you went very dark just a second ago, Gunther.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a sec. There we go. Cool. Got it.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, well, we went to see if any questions come in from chat. Anything else that you two wanted to go over?
I
Bird and Vhergo. Yeah,
I do have something to bring up. So I think there was a point in that on that Sanctum map or Sanctuary map where our poke core was on the point. We got there because I think the way we play that, at least, is when we have our support ults, when we have like the Brig ult or the Transcendence, we get like super aggressive with it. So although we're not a poke comp with those, like with the sustain from those, we like to play a lot more aggressive. And I think that's kind of like that's why we ended up like so far up. Is that something we want to be doing? Do we want to play more aggressive with those support ults since we will have the sustain?
So I want you to think about a little bit the difference between Trank and Rally, because not all support ults are the same. Not all support ults do the same thing. So if we think about Trank, well, what does Trank do? How do you want to be using Trank conceptually?
To counter other ults or just for a lot of healing.
And how do you want to be using Rally?
Maybe to counter like an engage from the enemy team, I guess. I don't know, or just when you want to play super aggressive.
So it's what you omitted there that's most telling to me. It's that Rally is an ult you use to counter a fight or be a part of a fight, whereas Transcendence is an ult that you use to counter another ult. Using Rally to play aggressively, I think that's good, because in the comp that you're on, what else are you going to be doing with Rally, right? Any other time you use it, if you were to use Rally defensively, it would probably, you know, the armor would get burned off too quickly. You're not really in a situation where you can reuse Rally as a defensive ult in this scenario, and in really the meta in general right now. So using your Rally aggressively, I really, really like. But using your Trank, the comp that you're on, I don't believe has enough damage to get value out of the time that you would be tranking. I think that on that poke comp, you can be more comfortable playing, you know, slowly, even if you have Trank, and then using that Trank for tempo, but not planning for that to be a part of your fight. Planning to use a Rally and go aggressively, I really, really like. But planning to use a Trank and go aggressively feels very risky to me, because if that Trank doesn't get value, well, now your Zen's in a bad position, and the enemy team knows you don't have a defensive ult, so they can just go.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. We got a couple of questions in chat as well. But before we get there, any last questions from you, both of you who are in here?
I'm okay. I'm good.
All right.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of a way to word, because we talked about earlier on enabling ults and like getting the criteria to where you can use that ult. But I'm trying to think of specific examples other than the ones that we covered, like Death Blossom, for example.
So in terms of that, I would say the rubric you should kind of construct for yourself is what is stopping me from getting value from this ult? What do I have to counter that counter, right? You know, Reaper, what's stopping a Reaper from getting value with Death Blossom? The enemy team, he's moving slowly, so the enemy team can move away, right? Well, how do you counter that? You get a speed boost. So what's stopping me from getting value? What do I do to deal with that? Like, what kind of help do I have to deal with that problem? And what do I lose by using this ult? What do I lose by no longer having the threat of a pulse bomb or the threat of a high noon? It's like how a Widow holding a sightline is just as strong as a Widow getting a kill, because at the end of the day, you can't play there. You're stopping the enemy team from doing something. If the enemy team is not pushing you because they know you have Trank and you're going to counter, don't use Trank. If they're not going to push you, let them not push you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, let's move on to the questions we got from chat. So Eskimorris asked, can we review that rally in the last fight and get your analysis? Is that something we can jump back into?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. I'll get us back over there real quick.
From what I saw, it seemed...
Oops. Hold on, I'm going to pause this and then throw control over to you.
All right, sounds good.
Yep, there you go. It's all yours.
All right, cool. So from what I saw, it seemed, I think, a little early, but... Oh, wait, is it this one? Yeah. Yeah, it's this one. So we'll go back a tiny bit. It seemed a little early, but overall, okay. The main thing about getting value from Rally is... like giving it a little bit of time, and there's a difficult sweet spot to hit in terms of like giving Rally time to build up armor and using it too early so that you're not actually getting any value from getting that armor back with the Rally itself. So you pop it here. I think you could have done it. Actually, I think you could have done it like a second earlier, but you didn't really have it yet. So overall, I think it's okay. I'll be honest, I don't necessarily know what you're looking for in terms of analysis, but I think given the situation you were in, the people around you, and when you got it, it's good.
All right, I'll wait and see if there's any follow-ups once stream catches up to us. Moving on to the next question. This comes from Exuberance. So if they flip mid-point, should I prioritize taking point back or finishing the fight? And I think this is in reference to, you know, like win the fight first, take the point second.
If
I'll repeat it. Yeah, I'll read it one more time. Oh, you got it. Good.
No, I got it. If contesting the point, if the enemy team is going to win the game by flipping that point, you stop that. But if you have the ability to retake that point, win the fight. It's binary. If you're going to lose the game by the enemy capping that point, you stop the cap. And yeah, sure, if your team is playing in a fundamentally wrong way where every single fight the enemy team is flipping cap on point, then maybe you have some problems beyond. And I'm not saying this is you specifically. I more so mean like, if this does come up as a common problem, then yeah, maybe there are some other fundamental issues to be looking at. But I think realistically, if the enemy team is going to flip, let them flip and kill the rest of their team. If they're splitting up their team to flip point, just kill their team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's see here. I think that's looking good. Eskimorris, can you just give me a thumbs up or something if your question got answered well enough, or if you had any follow-up questions, that would be great. But yeah, this I think that takes care of it. I'm gonna bring us back to our summarizing scene here. Eskimorris asks if they can watch it in slow-mo. Yeah, is there something specific that you're looking for, Eskimorris? And I'll take us back to that scene.
I'm not against it. I'm just curious what you're looking for.
Yeah. That would be a big help, Eskimoris, if you've got a little bit more that you can give us there so that we can look for it.
You didn't have rally.
Sorry, they just really enjoyed the
got-
play, is what they said. So
Right, get out of here. Get this guy out of here.
all right. Well, appreciate that from you. And let's see here. Any final words that you want to say to everybody out there? Anything you want to plug? Remember, Gunthera is a part of Pico as well.
Oh,
So
I forgot about that.
yeah, you are.
Yeah, so I am a coach for Pico. I don't have the links to all of our servers and everything, but you know, if you're here and you know what Pico is, you probably have the link. I believe in you.
Yes.
My Twitter is @KongDuGunthera. It's a really clever pun.
It's right below you.
Oh, it is? Let's
Yes.
go. That's also my Twitch. I don't really stream very often. I probably should, if I'm being honest, but I haven't in a while. But I will be doing it again whenever the school semester slows down a little bit, because I'm currently a college student. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to plug. I'm just kind of happy to be here and ramble about Overwatch for an hour and a half.
Yeah, awesome. No, it was great. Got some compliments coming in from chat as well. They very much appreciate you coming out and doing this great review. If you type !Pico in chat, that will give you a link to Pico as well, so you can check them out there. And in addition, we do have !Donate as well. You can donate as well towards the funds for next week. Eskimoris says thank you, as well as do a few others in chat. Really appreciate you coming out. And remember to tune into all of the great content that we have here at Overwatch Tranquility. We've got the Iris podcast, Predicting Tranquility, of course, the Coach's Corner, and the Beat Drop, which airs on Friday. Be sure to check out the other two games that are going to happen tomorrow night, the Transcendence tier match, and of course, Thursday, the Discord tier match as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to both of my guests. Once again, happy birthday to you. It's midnight now on the East Coast, so I don't know if that's where you're at, Bird, but if it is, happy birthday. And
I still got an hour to wait. So,
you still got an hour to wait. All right, you're in the Midwest. All right, well, happy birthday to you tomorrow. Thank you both for coming in to join us. And that's going to do it. GG's, and see you next time.